is happy. Everybody happy to go? I see Avril Davidson waiting to get in. Okay, I think that's probably everybody who needs to be on screen in. Right, well, good morning everybody and welcome to this meeting of the Resources Committee. Should I drop off the call, Caroline Stewart will take over to chair the meeting until I'm reconnected. And I'd like to welcome colleagues from the SPA, Police Scotland, Scottish Government and HMICS. I understand that DCC Beck Smith will attend from Police Scotland, replacing DCC Connors.
Although, sorry to interrupt there, Chair, I do see we've also got Deb Connors on the call as well. Bird's eye view of the Deb there.
I beg your pardon, thank you for the interruption. My apologies, DCC Connors. You're most welcome. And I'd like to remind members,
Attendees. Deb wants to come in.
Oh, right. DCC Connors.
If I could, sorry, it's the handover. I'm just going to support finance colleagues from an operational point of view while Alan's on holiday. And I was going to say DCC Smith is actually, as if by magic, she's here as well. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. And welcome, DCC Smith. I'd like to just, before we get started with everything, I'd like to just remind attendees that members have read all the papers and introductory remarks should be kept to a minimum and focus on anything that's not actually included in the reports or any changes since the reports were written. This approach will ensure we can move on to members' questions as swiftly as possible on each of the items. So, with that introduction, I think the only apologies we have are from Angela Leith. I think that's correct.
That's correct. Apologies from Angela Leith.
Yeah, thank you. And in terms of the next item, 1.3, and I invite members to declare any interests or connections with anything on the agenda. Thank you. So 1.4, I would like to ask members to confirm they're happy to take items 6 to 11 in private in accordance with the reasons outlined in the papers and per section 20 of our standing orders. All happy with that? Thank you very much. There haven't been any decisions taken since the last meeting of the committee. So that takes us straight on to item 2, the minutes and actions from the previous meeting. First of all, the minutes of the meeting on the 13th of February. Are members happy to approve these as a correct record? Take silences. Yes. That takes on to the action log. There are a few items here. The first item, third-party payments, we've had a briefing on that, so propose to close that one. Second one on benefits realisation reporting, that's not due until August, so that gets carried forward. And the next two items on oversight of change are not due till June, so they get carried forward. And the budget management will be considered as part of the committee development day in Q1, which will be in June. So that again is not due yet. So are we happy to deal with these on that basis? Thank you. That takes us on to agenda item 3.1, financial reporting report, and welcome Lynn Brown, acting head of finance, to this item. Lynn, over to you. I think you can work on the basis that you just want to highlight particular things, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the report is there. That covers the period 10, which is up to the end of January. Obviously, we're now middle of March, so very close to that year-end position. So just in terms of a couple of key things to kind of call out from the report, in terms of revenue, members will notice that the deliverability of the forecast has moved from amber to green, and that is just really reflective of the fact that the pay offers or the pay awards for 24-25 have now been confirmed, and as I say, we are so close to the end of the financial year. So revenue in a whole is looking okay as we move towards the end of the financial year, hence the green confidence around deliverability of the revenue forecast. Just in terms of capital, so we reported in the Q3 report the overall break-even position anticipated for capital with a slippage management number of 10.2, which essentially reflected that over-programming and the levers that we had to manage the year-end position. The capital report at the end of P10 shows £42.6 million of capital spend for 25-26. As at yesterday, the total capital spend is 56.4 million, which means we've got 10 million left to go by the end of the financial year. By tomorrow, that will be down to 7 million. We're expecting a significant order tomorrow. So obviously in the report, the period 10 report, the deliverability is still at amber, but that has been progressing. And, you know, as we've reported before, the daily forecasting, the linking in with business areas, and that is really moving. So as I say, as at tomorrow, we will have £7 million left to spend in our core capital allocation, and there are still levers available to us. So just to give that update around capital, and then in terms of reform, slightly under forecast, but that has been monitored alongside the overall revenue position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. That's very clear. And the daily monitoring of capital is clearly working very hard, working very well. But with only 2.5 weeks to go, getting the remaining 7 million down and cleared, I think it still requires a bit of work. Your report's very clear as usual. Thank you very much indeed. I'll
Thank you.
pass straight over to members for questions. Alistair.
Yeah, thanks again. As the chair just said, Lynn, very clear report. And I don't underestimate in any way, shape or form the complexity at Police Scotland's budget. And there is credit to all the budget holders and the finance team, you know, that we're so close to the end of the financial year, but bit of work still to do. But it looks like you're close to delivering a balanced budget. So that is to be commended. I'd like to probe a little bit though on the capital budget. We've moved to a longer term capital plan, and part of the thinking behind that is not to leave us in a position towards the financial year where you're still relying on still fairly substantial spends, you know, in the last, you know, few weeks of the financial year. So I was wondering, you know, how effective you consider the long-term capital planning process, that change to that, how effective and helpful has that been? And thinking ahead to next year, and obviously there's an increase in the capital budget for next year. Is there any big projects, you know, any big contracts that have been awarded that would enable that spend, the profile of the spend, to be more loaded towards the front end of the year?
Thank you. James, I see your hand up. You want to answer that one?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'll start, and others may have comment to add. I think on the long-term planning, it's still at an early stage in the sense that, you know, things like in the state's master plan or the digital strategy, it has, you know, the big blocks of money for activity in over a number of years. What we haven't yet developed and are looking to do through the spring and the summer is the real detailed plans, delivery plans about how we deliver against a big project. So the intention would be that we start probably in May looking at a 3 to 5 year horizon, with the most focus on the next 3 years from a capital perspective around what the organisation needs in a really, you know, down to the detail of what are the actual plans, the delivery plans, what are the resourcing requirements. So we started that for 25-26, and DCC Corners led that capital task force, which has set us up for 25-26. But now we want to replicate that, but over a longer period. And instead of doing it at the back end of the financial year. If we do it through the spring and into the summer, then that means that people will have a longer lead-in time to the next financial year. So, you know, I'll pick up with colleagues in the SPA, but ideally, what we would like to get to is to give budget holders sufficient confidence around their allocations for 26, 27 and beyond, that they can start moving on things like putting contracts in place, because we know we'll have a capital allocation, but it's almost getting notional agreement 6 months out from the start of the financial year, you know, that the budget holders can go to work and work with procurement to put contracts in place. So it's an evolving journey. It's in line with the recommendations that we had in the Deloitte capital review work that was done. So I think for 25, 26, you'll see an improvement. Do I think we'll probably have some back end spend? I think we probably will, but the intention is that we've got all the planning done and the activity underway in the autumn to set us up for 26, 27. So it's an ongoing journey of continuous improvement.
Are you happy with that, Alistair?
Yeah, thanks very much for that, James, and I appreciate it as a developing picture, and you know, we'd support your direction to travel on this. So from the response you said that you gave there, we're not quite there with that slightly longer term, particularly in terms of the delivery plans for the big programs like estates and digital. So we'll still see an element next year of back end in a year before some of the capital is spent. Is that really what you're saying? Not big contracts early on?
Yeah, so I think you'll see a big improvement on the year that we're currently in. You know, from an estates perspective, certainly we're seeing this as a transition year where we're moving away from a very reactive approach to capital maintenance into properly planned full building refurbishment and major projects and so on. But you know, we've had the green light to move on some of the resourcing. I see that I think DCC Corners would want to come on this, so we are bringing in resources. But it's not going to be that we're absolutely flying out the blocks. You will see more spend coming through than you did in the current financial year. My intention, certainly from an estates perspective, is that you'll start to see a real ramping up through the spring and into the summer and into the winter of spend. And then once we've got it ramped up, we maintain it at a higher level, but we're putting the kind of building blocks in place to be able to spend at a higher rate into the future and the associated supply chain.
Yeah. Thanks, James. DCC Connor, well, I'm not sure which of the two, since you're sitting beside each other.
Yeah, if I could come in, that'd be great. Thank you. So yeah, it's a really good question, and James has covered quite a lot of it. I think the bit for us in terms of, as James says, 25, 26, you know, deliverability, because we can allocate to capital, but the question we've always had to answer, is it deliverable? So looking at the resources we need for that capital and making sure that it's there. But when you look at the work we want to do in public contact, the work that we want to do with our scope, which is our people system and our finance system, and making sure that they're there, and then the prioritisation of change processes, because we're making a lot of work around digital in terms of some of our data platforms, so we combine some of our systems so we don't have to do 10 searches, we only have to do one. So there's a huge amount of work in the background that is coming forward. All of those will require capital investment as we go forwards, because those are multi-year programs. So it comes in two parts from a business point of view, which is what is deliverable, and we've got that money in the capital and we've programmed it in, but we're also looking at that longer term over the next 2 to 3 years. When you look at the business plan, that gives us the formation of, and the foundation for what we're aspiring to do, and we need to be able to make it deliverable, and that's the work that prioritisation of change is doing. And I think just to support finance colleagues, you know, that we've delivered on our capital. It might have been a bit of a difficult, bumpy ride at the end of it, but we always deliver on our capital. You know, we say what we're going to do. We've had real issues up and down with the pay award, so it's been a very up and down year. But when you look going forwards, we've got all of the building blocks we need to do better capital planning, but longer term capital planning as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Pauline.
Thanks very much, Lynn. As always, a really clear and well-produced report. I'm aware that there's a lot of manual work goes into it, and I know that you'll be expecting with the upgrade in the financial system that much more could be automated and really give you and colleagues the tools to help really understand spend and added value of activities. So my question is, when is the finance system going to be upgraded? Because I know it has been in the capital plan.
So just in terms of the upgrade to the financial system, obviously work is ongoing around that, and you know, I think there was an update on it in resources last month in terms of some of the issues we were encountering and some of the things that's still to be delivered around that. In terms of the reporting, I see James has got his hand up, so he may want to come in on the system side. But in terms of the reporting itself, we are looking in terms of how we can standardise some of our reporting going forward. That's actively ongoing at the minute. You know, in terms of how we kind of transition from where we are now to when we have that, you know, the more advanced upgrades. But I'll maybe let James come in first, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. James.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I can give you a bit of an update on the direction of travel. I see, you know, DCC Smith might want to come in on this as well. So, you know, we're operating on an old version of a pretty basic finance system, and the direction of travel is that we, in the short term, we will move to a more modern version of the system, which will give us a greater resilience around that. But directionally, we're looking to move towards, you know, a kind of ERP ecosystem type approach on a broader corporate services basis. So, you know, the intention would be that we will over the coming years move to a properly upgraded and integrated, hopefully with HR system, which will massively increase automation and our reporting capability. And as such, that there are plans for the service, the finance service, which is, you know, it's strong on control, but there's more we can do around efficiency, particularly in our business intelligence function, which is doing a lot of manual, you know, journaling and data manipulation in order to get to reporting. So that I suppose is a direction of travel over the next 2 to 3 years, and it will make us much more efficient in the delivery of our reports.
Okay, DCC Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add to that, Pauline, it's a really good question, and I suppose probably shows some of the issues that we're facing with our ageing technology that we have, and we've inherited, as you all know, over the years, all of the systems. And James is right, there are lots of options in the pipeline in terms of what solutions we're looking at in the longer term to bring all of those systems together so that we've got one version of the truth, an accurate kind of understanding of the picture, not least in finance, but also across people as well, so that we can draw that together. That's my ambition with that. And I suppose just on the wider point that was mentioned earlier in terms of spend, James is absolutely right in what he says in terms of having a look right across the piece and looking at the capital spend and making that really clear in terms of where we're going. And that really aligns to the sort of change prioritisation work that I've started picking up the new function. And my intention would be to be able to demonstrate how our spend matches our plans in terms of where we're going over the next few years, and tying up all of those pieces together. So you can see the operating model, the estates plan, workforce plan, the spend that aligns with that, and the key pieces of infrastructure that we need to bring in to be able to allow us to do some of the things that we want to do that are more innovative in terms of the tech space. So that's the piece of work that I'm working on at the moment. So hopefully that will help this committee to see the sort of higher level strategic plan and how that aligns with spend moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, could I just come back in that? I think that's been really helpful, DCC Smith. When do you think you'll be in a position to bring that strategic oversight to the committee?
So I'm hoping to be able to bring something through in around 3 months' time, Pauline, that will give you a view of that. And then that will provide the base for us to be able to give a more detailed plan underneath in terms of the delivery elements of that. But within the next 3 months, I should be able to bring something to you which will give you that overview.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you content with that? And Caroline?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lynn, as always, for your report. And as it's my final meeting, I just want to say congratulations again to you and the team for bringing in a substantial budget, pretty much on the money. So I just want to say congratulations for that. I think my point was really around the question that Pauline raised, and it was really just to say that in my 8 years here, we've had 2 shots at an ERP business case. So I'm hoping that because we have business cases coming out of our ears for this, that we will just be brushing one of them up and bringing that back to the table, because I can't imagine any of the fundamentals have changed in terms of the back office. Thanks.
Thanks, Caroline. Any other questions from it? Oh, sorry, DCC Smith, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just going to pick up on what Caroline said. You're absolutely right, Caroline, which obviously we've done a lot of the groundwork around that. I think probably in my experience, it's fair to say ERP solutions have moved on and we know of successful implementations. So my want is that we learn the lessons, we consider off-the-shelf procurement as opposed to bespoke kind of elements of that, and that's the piece that we're working on with the team. So Andrew's team are doing an awful lot of work at the moment around what that looks like, and there's lots of options that we've got in the pipeline for that. So I'm really confident and hopeful that we'll be in the right place where we need to be just in terms of the ERP moving forward.
Yeah, and off-the-shelf solutions, absolutely the way to go, and probably cloud-based as well. But I think all the fundamentals in terms of the business case are sort of done. So hopefully that will enable you to shortcut, because the business case for doing it won't have changed at all. It's just going to be the cost and the platform you pick, really. So I wish you well with it, though. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Any other points from anybody on the committee? Alistair.
Yeah, thanks. Just a question on the revenue budget. Lynn, you mentioned that the deliverabilities moved from amber to green, because we now know what the pay award is. But I think it's my understanding that the pay award is different to the initial planning assumption when the budget was set. It is only an assumption. How has that impacted in terms of delivering the budget? You know, in terms of the flexibility you've had to demonstrate to find the resource to pay the award at the end of the year?
Yeah, so yeah, just in terms of the additional cost of the 1.75% difference, that was just over £20 million. So that's all been included in the forecast numbers in terms of the, you know, like the forecast position. The detail is included in that in page 4 of the report, which shows that movement from the original approved budget to where we are now at Q3 forecast. So again, just as was mentioned, there has been a lot of ups and downs in the budget over the year. You know, some of the sort of main financial like the financial benefits, if you like, albeit not operational benefits, but financial benefits. We've been, you know, the first half of the year we were running under officer establishment and, you know, the staff establishment budgeted position. So that's obviously been reported throughout the year. So that obviously has operational implications, but it has led to a financial benefit that has helped to support in year. There was also some one-off benefit we had in particular, you know, around like the money we had for the VER budget. That was obviously delivered more efficiently than was anticipated, looking at vacancy as well as staff exits, etc. So we still achieved what we were looking to achieve. We just done it for less money. So that was able to support in year. And then overall, there has been some other, you know, movements throughout the financial year to ensure the affordability of that pay award. So it has been a challenging position. It has had to be managed over the year. It's been well reported as we've moved through committee where those sort of moving pieces are. And as I say, up until last month, it was always reported as amber because we just didn't know how the pay was going to land. And it's just, there's that more confidence now that, you know, those underspends are there, the pay award's been agreed and subject to having nothing completely unforeseen in the last 2 weeks of the financial year. We're pretty much there, but I see James has got his hand up, so he may want to add to that. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Lynn. James.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just to say that, you know, the main way in which it was done overall was on one-offs. It was non-recurring, and that is why the conversation we had with Scottish Government in the autumn about the budget was that we needed that just over £20 million in our allocation for the forthcoming year, just to make that a sustainable pay award. So that has happened. But as Lynn says, it's as we go through the years and things happen that are different to what our assumptions were, there's a real tight grip on understanding both operationally what the cost drivers are from a financial perspective, being able to give the overall view of all of the moving parts and working closely, particularly with the DCCs during the course of the year, in order to manage the position, because we've said it before, it's not straightforward, trying to land the jumbo jet on the stamp, but it's because of that diligent management from Lynn and the team in finance, but also the really strong links into operational policing that we're able to get there. But as I say, it was done on a one-off basis to get that extra 20 million, but that's been made sustainable through the funding allocation for the forthcoming financial year.
Thanks very much, James. Alistair, are you happy with that response?
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it's sustainable and it's been achieved through that joined up, flexible approach throughout the year. I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, in summary, first of all, Lynn, you've already had compliments about the form of reporting, and I'd just like to add and endorse these. It's incredibly clear reporting, which has helped the committee right through the year, seeing how things have progressed. I like James's comment about landing a jumbo jet on a pin virtually. It's a huge task. This is an enormous budget, and to be able to manage the recurring bits and the one-off bits in the way you've done is all credit to the team. I hope that there are no last-minute surprises on revenue, and I hope that the capital position with a little bit left to spend can be managed. The comments that people have made about monitoring the capital position is one that it's been one of my hobby horses right through the year, because in previous years we've actually had a better profile of spend during the year without so much at the back end. And I think going forward, one way that the committee might find helpful is to get included in the papers for every meeting how much of the actual spend by category has actually been committed, so we can actually see very clearly how it's coming through. I know there's been quite a lot of reporting done on that in the past, but actually just to home in on what can be done, because there are some things that are easier than others. For example, buying equipment. It would be like in other parts of the public sector who've also faced the challenge of annuality. A number of them have actually gone straight in from day one of the financial year with orders for the equipment that they know they're going to need. That has the dual advantage of getting it in use earlier in the year, so they get the benefit earlier in the year rather than the back end. But I think everybody accepts that, particularly with estates, this is a much more challenging environment. The construction industry is having its own problems just now that it didn't have a few years ago, and therefore getting any contract of a construction industry nature is particularly difficult and tends to take longer to negotiate, arrange, and deliver. So I don't underestimate the particular challenge that that presents. But I think the steps that have been described this morning about the way forward are really heading definitely in the right direction, and I hope they can be delivered. But certainly the more that the capital can be profiled earlier in the year, I think the better. Finally, just picking up the points on the ERP system. I agree with Caroline's comment about buying an off-the-shelf system is far better than anything that is in any way bespoke. If you start bespoking things, you then have the ongoing problem of how you continually upgrade and so on. But from my experience, introducing an off-the-shelf system may sound straightforward, but actually, to deliver it, you've actually got to change a lot of the way you do things within the organization to make that work effectively. And so I do not underestimate the challenge that presents to actually getting the ERP system in place. but that doesn't stop the importance of doing so. So the sooner it can get on, I think there'll be huge benefits to the organisation. Right. Unless anybody's got anything else to say about this particular report. Thanks again, Lynn. I think it's very clear. I know you very clearly explained, although you're reporting primarily about where we were at month 10, at sort of month 11 and a half, it's very helpful to have the latest update. And so thank you very much for that. So I think we just note that report. And then that lets us move on to section 4 on procurement. And I'm looking to see if Ian McKee's coming on screen. Yeah, yes, Ian. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
As I mentioned before, I think you can take it that people have studied the report. Is there anything that has changed since you produced it?
No, just the absolutely some headline points is that we consulted across all areas, unions included, no major changes. We aligned to all the strategies as you would expect us to do. And there's only one thing that I would flag is we put in a financial impact on resources. But to the previous discussion, the resources have been approved with a real focus on capital spending and that the increase in the next year to 10 years, specific to the master plan. All the resources are approved and we are looking to get to recruitment as soon as possible. And that absolutely feeds into the speed we'll be able to move on getting contracts in place to enable capital spending. So we're splitting our estates team and our corporate services teams into 2 separate teams to put a sole focus on estates. And that'll be a massive change, as well as bringing in contract management and performance management and to support the estates spend, both in hard and soft FM. So there'll be quite big changes in there and a real focus on us, which doesn't sit within the strategy, but a real focus on us driving and supporting the areas to get to a requirement to allow us to get to a procurement tender process as quickly as possible. So it just feeds direct into that conversation. So I just wanted to flag that. And that would be my key points.
Right, thank you. James.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just to pick up on the resourcing point that Ian made around ramping that up for the increased capital spend, and it was just to give the members that assurance that from a finance perspective we are anticipating that we will be able to capitalise the vast majority of those costs, because obviously we're going to come on to speak about the budget later and we know we've got a real revenue pressure. So these resources, the intention is that they won't put a pressure into revenue, they will be capitalised, because the sole purpose of bringing them in is capital delivery. So we're looking at our internal policy around the capitalisation of staff, and we're going to be doing more of that, not just into procurement but into other business areas where there's increased resources in order to deliver against an enhanced capital plan. And that feeds into that whole conversation we had on the last item about making sure that we're fit for the future by bringing in these additional resources. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, James. Caroline.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ian, for this report. Very, very clear. And I guess just picking up on your remarks and also then James's, which I think is very helpful, and I think actually beefing up that division is going to help you hugely. However, having been here for 8 years, getting procurement resources seems to be a bit like hen's teeth in the market, and we had adopted the strategy of growing our own. So I suppose my question is, number one, how realistic is it to be thinking you'll pick some up in the market? And number two, how is the strategy going to grow our own resources in this regard? Thanks.
Yeah, so okay, on growing our own, which helps with the first question, that has worked really well. We have managed to promote about 8 staff since we put the new model in through, and that saved us getting out 8 times and failing 8 times effectively. Now, it still meant we had to backfill, but there was obviously the knock-on effect. But thereafter, we went out to market for, if you like, more common post types, and where we could bring in staff at a G3 level without procurement experience into our services support area and develop their skills. So it has really worked well. The freeze killed our supply chain as such, and that it killed off. We've rebuilt that, and we're back to almost full capacity. So that has helped significantly and continues to deliver. However, the challenge in the market did improve over a period of time and we successfully recruited. However, that market has slowed back down again slightly. So we will be at a challenge. But on the plus side of that, we've been here before, so we're well teed up with P&D, the kind of language we need to use for adverts and the routes that we need to go through to bring the staff in, plus all the procurement team, myself included, work as best we can via your LinkedIn and other connections to approach potential new members of the team for interview. So we're working hard in that regard. But it doesn't come without its challenge. However, we are already working on estates packages for next year, and this will allow us to instantly kind of improve, because we'll focus on the most senior post first, which is the one that we're going to use to drive the service to bring qualitative information to us as quickly as possible in a planned manner. So that then the initial stages will be dealt with, kind of the priority stages will be dealt with first to allow the most significant impact on increasing the spend and therefore our procurement, therefore the spend. So we're approaching it every way we can. It will be difficult, it will take just longer, but we've been slightly more productive in the last wee while, so it's not without hope.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very sensible strategy, and because I'm not hugely confident about your market searches in terms of getting the people you need. So therefore, prioritisation is going to become absolutely key, because if we're not doing that ruthlessly, then James's strategy around the property and getting that capital spent is going to come to naught. So I think that's the right approach. But I think also maybe thinking of a plan B in terms of how can you accelerate that grow your own as well, I think, because I don't see this market improving. I just don't in the short term or even the medium term.
No, thank you. And we are looking at that with the ESR programme. We're at the end of a review there.
Wish you well with it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Any other points from members? Tom?
Thanks very much. I must say I'm greatly encouraged by both James and Ian's inputs regarding the estates master plan and delivery of it, and DCC Connor's points about establishing the blueprint for delivery, if I want to call it that. But we're building up the procurement team, and it's when will the blueprint be ready? And it's because if we don't, what are you procuring against? How are you prioritising? Is it just what's obvious as opposed to this is part of that blueprint? So it's the dependency in the blueprint, and when realistic will we get that blueprint?
Thank you.
I don't know if somebody else wants to come in first, or I could take that to a degree.
Sorry, Chair, if it's okay, I'm happy to come in.
Yes, certainly, DCC Connors.
Yeah, so it's again a really good question, Tom. So as we know, the target operating model has been outlined. The revised model of policing oversight group and the process that we went through got us into our pillars. The blueprint, actually, we're looking to bring that forward. I think it's due to come to the committees in June, but we already have the outline for the blueprint now. We're just working it through. So it won't take much longer for that to come through. And actually the prioritisation of change work is more about what supports the blueprint, because the blueprint is very much how we do our community model, how we do our different actions, and the procurement systems that will enable our fleet, as you say, our estates, our technology will all support that, but we do have it in draft and we'll be bringing it forward, I believe, in June.
Okay, thank you. Tom, do you want to come back on that?
Right, thanks very much. That's really encouraging. That it's so the second point for Ian was how do we align the recruitment and so that chain of procurement work is there for them. The other thing, just in terms of the work that's ongoing with the blueprint and the target operating model for policing delivery, etc. There's a lot of assumptions that will be in that actually requires our own feedback into that as well. So there's a bit about here bringing it still in a position that is this the absolute final model? Is there movement against some of the assumptions that be in that still possible at that stage? So June's not that far away, and I look forward to seeing it then.
Good, thank you.
Chair,
DCC Connors, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for allowing me to come back in. So yeah, you're absolutely right, and there'll be, because it's such a big piece, there will be pathfinder processes as well, because you know the kind of target operating model where we want to move to and the services that we need to deliver for our communities are going to require us to do it in different stages and check and evaluate at each stage. So you're absolutely right, that will be built in as part of it, and a lot of it does link to estates in particular and the estates master plan and how we do that. We had a good conversation with procurement, legal and estates colleagues about what's the scheduling for when we need to bring different resources on as that model matures. So all of those discussions are not ongoing, but I hope that reassures you that there will be a number of check and balances points as we move forward.
It does, DCC Connors. I'm grateful to you for that. My question is, at officer level, is SPA involved in that?
So my understanding is we've got the different programme boards and we brief in. I will double check who sits on what, and certainly as we're moving to the point now where we've come out of concept discovery into actually tangible, we will be able to engage a lot more than we have been able to. But I will check that and make sure that we do have that scrutiny involved in the programme boards.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Chair, if it's okay to combine Tom's point, directed at myself, is really behind that. We meet fortnightly with the estates team and finance business partner, and we've worked through. We've got the full list of works, and we're really trying to prioritise that. So we have got 14 prioritised at the moment for working on for next year to work them through, and then working through the remainder to try and get them into works packages. So again, we have got a full list of everything that estates needs to achieve. We're working into works packages. They are being discussed and around against the known blueprint / master plan as to where that is going to have a knock-on effect, or whether that should continue, not continue, change the approach to these identified works. So that should all gel into the path. So we're just prioritising as we can, but as best we can at the moment, getting the kind of key resources brought in as early as possible to then allow more time in that planning and gelling completely with the master planning. So that should all come together in the round, but that's how we're approaching it at the moment, Tom.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Ian. Oh, sorry, Alistair. Yeah.
Yeah, just first of all to say that, you know, I support the strategy and that ability to deliver strategically at pace. I think that was my key question, and I think you've answered that, and I really look forward to seeing that. For me, my question is on community benefit. It's a real value add in terms of the amount of money that public money that Police Scotland spends, and obviously within the strategy you're trying to maximise that, but there's challenges, it says, in some areas. You know, I wonder if you could just explain further what the challenges are. And then my secondary question is, you know, when contracts promise the delivery of community benefit, how are we assured that it's actually delivered, and how do we see that those benefits are actually feeding through communities across Scotland?
Yeah, so the challenges in community benefits are really probably almost purely down to how tough the market is out there and how tough, I guess, making profit is out there. Therefore, what are you not delivering to make your profit, and what can we get out of a contract other than cost, quality, spec that we're trying to get. So it is always going to be difficult to add community benefit into that, because again, as budgets go tight, you sit and you go, so what weighting do you put to community benefit? You know, you go with guidance, you've got to include your sort of Fair Work First weighting in that. So it gets quite complicated as to, well, what is our driver here? Is it we actually don't have enough budget to make provision for this service, or where do we cut that weighting in evaluation terms? So it comes down to what you're trying to achieve, what markets you're in, and how tough that market is for those, I guess, those providers, and therefore what scope do we have to deliver and look for community benefit, because effectively what you're trying to do is squeeze as much as we can to the benefit of Scotland, and do that across the country. The measuring of that is we do track that to a degree, but we cannot set up the resources to track it fully. The same as we cannot do that for a range of things that we have to take at face value. However, where there are major benefits being promised, we do follow that up in our tier 1 and tier 2 providers, but not all the rest. The majority would be via tier 1 or tier 2. We don't get hundreds of these, so we do follow them up where we have regular scheduled meetings anyway, and it'd be part of an agenda item, Alistair. So it is followed up, but it's not something we put a resource focus on. We do it as part of a standard process, the same as we would do, have you implemented any other change? Are you implementing benefits for us? Are you looking at innovation? Are you still investing? Those are the contract management pieces that give you the add value through the term of the contract, and then feed into lessons learned to improve the next generation of the contract, which is where that full cycle and our kind of new contract supply management team is really starting. That cycle's completed now, and we're starting to build benefits into new tenders. So that's basically how it works.
Yeah. No, that's really a helpful explanation for me. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Alistair. Any questions from anybody else? No. Ian, could I just come in on one or two things? You mentioned a few minutes ago 14 prioritised for next year, but could you give me an indication as 14 out of how many?
It's 14 out of roughly 100 at the moment. So we know of roughly 100 pieces of works that have to happen next year. Now they need to be packaged, so you'll have windows, boilers, roofing, etc., all over the country. And what we want to do is work towards what gets packaged together, what would be done as a lot, what would have to be geographically. So if it's Orkney, we know we have to deal with providers in that region. So we are starting to get into those packages, and then what sits beside that is then obviously linking that entirely into that we're not looking to develop a site that's part of the master plan, and making sure that all gels together. But the first bit is to look at these and get them into plans. So it's 14 out of 100 at the moment, but those 100 could easily evolve down to 70 procurements. We just don't know at the moment, because you might group some of those together in lots. That's the work that'll be going on continually in the States, but for us, we're meeting every fortnight to sort of drive that forward.
Right, thank you. That gives me a better feel for it. I suppose really, and other people have touched on this as well, you've got this great strategy, and over the time that I've been involved, I think Caroline as well, over the time we've been involved on the board, you have achieved a huge amount to actually ensure compliance and bringing the standards right up. I think, to me, the way forward is procurement is obviously an enabler to make things happen. And I think as we go more and more into territory that is perhaps less familiar to your team in the estates category, as opposed to procuring vehicles and so on, which and other such contracts which you're very familiar with, I don't underestimate the challenge of having the right people, the right skills in there to be able to do it at pace. It's such that it's an enabler to make things happen in a joined up way with the organisation's demands. I'm sure and I don't have any specific reason to suggest this, but it would be unfortunate if delivering our higher spend capital program and obviously higher spend revenue program was in any way held back because your team couldn't move at sufficient pace to make it all happen. And I'd only encourage you to sort of put your hand up early if you see signs of your team not being able to do that, because the ripple effect of the program not being delivered at pace is so important.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate that, and obviously I'm meeting regularly with James and giving assurances or raising the challenges, and 100% we're supported in doing that. But I would also bring that here as requested. But yeah, we're moving forward on the right foot. We're up against it for this year a little, just because of our 5 staff down and starting to recruit. But we will very quickly get up to speed and what we need to deliver. We've got a good core team of people in the team that deal with this form of contracting. So yeah, I think we're in a fair position, and it's going to get better.
Thank you. And you just mentioned just now the contract team. I know that it's not just a question of awarding a contract, but it's them managing the small print, if you like, within the contract and being sure that the KPIs in each contract are actually being adhered to. Is that something that your team is involved in, or is it actually the user that does it?
Yeah, it's twofold, Chair. It's the day-to-day management of, be on site by 9 o'clock is done by the estate service and indeed by any contract owner. So whether it's fleet, digital, the day-to-day management is there. If they have a challenge of that, they're not turning up on site, they've not delivered on time, there's an issue, they escalate that to the contract supplier management team. Out with that escalation route, we meet with all tier 1 and tier 2 providers. Our contract supplier management team track all those providers. We RAG status those providers. We follow any major issue going on with those providers. We track any challenges on cost, on terms and conditions, which obviously we've had multiple of those in the last year. The challenges have increased and a lot in the last year. Major ones being with OCS, which we're now finalising now, which is great. We found it got to a level footing again there. So yeah, there's lots goes on in that team, and it's all different kind of approaches and touch points. But they're very it's pretty structured through our tier 1 and tier 2 set structured meetings, set agendas. But we're dealing with anything that's got a challenge. We've got that on our radar all the time, and the guys are working in that every day. So there's multiple things happening in that area.
Right, thank you. I don't underestimate the challenge. And you said yourself that with the community benefits and so on, that as profit margins get tighter, all the contract, everybody who has a contract is probably going to try and maximise the contract, the profitability of the contract. So that just puts even more pressure on monitoring performance.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I wasn't trying to hog that whole discussion, but is there anything else that anybody else has on this procurement strategy? Are we happy to approve the procurement strategy for 2025 to 2028? Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for the paper, and I hope that delivery of it isn't too challenging for you. We'll watch in the sidelines.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Right, that takes us to item 5, which is the committee effectiveness review, and we welcome Vanessa, who has led this. Vanessa, over to you. Again, you can take it that we've studied the paper, so it's really a question of what you particularly would like us to decide on going forward.
Great, thank you very much, Chair. I will just briefly summarise and just provide some context that will inform your discussion. So the committee effectiveness process plays an important role, and it offers insight that supports the authority's commitment to continuous improvement of our governance arrangements. All of our committees undertake an annual self-assessment process to consider how they are performing against their terms of reference. This in turn informs the committee and the members' development, as well as priorities and work plans, and also the certificate of assurance, which each committee is required to submit to the Audit, Risk and Assurance Committee as part of our annual reporting and accounts process. You'll note from the paper that we enhanced this year's process. We invited the stakeholders, who are all listed at paragraph 1.2, to offer their assessment and views. Overall, the results from the members of the Resources Committee are largely positive. There are a few areas for improvement which have been identified, and I've set them out in paragraph 3.11. In terms of stakeholders, we received 3 responses to the overall survey, one of which provided feedback that was specific to the Resources Committee. Feedback was positive. They agreed that the committee priorities and reports were clear. However, they were unsure about the committee's effectiveness in overseeing and supporting policing, and they didn't think that there was enough time to consider papers when they were circulated. So, Chair, the ask of the committee is to discuss the report, the results and the suggested areas for improvement. And if you could confirm whether you are satisfied that the committee has discharged its terms of reference for the 24-25 reporting period. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. That's very clear. Open it to committee members. Pauline.
Thanks, Vanessa. A really clear report, and I thought generally I could identify with a lot of what was in it. Indeed, we've spoken, for example, about community impact and how we measure and monitor that. So I think there's a lot for us to take forward, tracking progress, monitoring of deliverables. We've spoken numerous committees about that. I know we've got a development day being planned at the moment, so I think there's a lot that we can take into that to see how we build in terms of that continuous improvement opportunity that this feedback gives us. In terms of the stakeholder feedback, was there any insights given as to how we could improve in terms of those areas that they identified that there was more to do, Vanessa?
On that particular feedback we received from that stakeholder there was an opportunity for stakeholders to provide general comments at the end of each session. And the comments that we did receive, because we did receive some comments, weren't relevant or related to the Resources Committee. So there is some learning for us about the survey process for next year, because it was a select the committee and tell us what you think. And then at the end, they were given an opportunity to have some free text. I think maybe next year we might evolve it further to say, and in relation to this committee, was there anything else particularly you would add, especially if you're unsure or unclear about whether or not the committee was discharging any of its responsibilities. Can I also just add on the equalities and impact section? That is a theme that's come through from all of the committees, and there is some things that we have got in train to support that. So one of the pieces of work is certainly improving the templates for board and committee reports. The section on implications, we've got financial, we've got social, we've got equalities, we've got resources, we've got people. All of that could be better enhanced with better guidance for report authors, so that they understand what non-executive members would expect to see in that space. So we do think that there is improvements that can happen in the year ahead, and all committees will have their development days, so we can take some of that back. I would also highlight, we speak to our stakeholders regularly, and although we had 3 responses, that's not a bad thing, because some of the stakeholders came back to us and said, we have free and frank conversations with you regularly on individual items and just generally on input. So we felt that they didn't need to respond, and they came back to us and said, if you don't mind, it'll be a nil return for us in this space, because they wanted to continue that conversation. And I would be keen that we did not hold all of our feedback, particularly for stakeholders as well, until the end of a committee effectiveness process. If we can continue to work with them throughout the year, then we enhance as we're going along.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair, and I guess we would want to kind of make sure that for people that had specific feedback on the Resources Committee, that they felt that they could feed that in at any time and offer some views as to how we could further improve.
Thank you. Anybody else? Alistair.
Yeah, thanks for the paper, Vanessa. And it's very important that we take stock every year to make sure that we are delivering against the terms of reference of all our committees. And first comment I would make is I think it adds real value, the fact that you're reaching out to the stakeholders. And I do appreciate that there is channels, you know, for them to get involved and to speak to us throughout the year. But this formal process, I think, adds real value. For me, I think the thing that I'd like to explore a little bit further is about the time to consider the papers. It's one of these areas where these are often lengthy and often very complex papers. So the first thing is it is important that we get them in a timely fashion. And then my question really is, was that comment about the time that's given for consideration during the meetings, or was it about getting the papers in a timely fashion?
Alistair, it was specifically related to the timeline. So if a stakeholder attends and contributes at our meetings, they get to see the papers at the same time as members, which is 7 days in advance. That is assuming the papers have been submitted 7 days in advance and they're available for members. There are then stakeholders who get to see them 3 days in advance because that's when they publish on our website. And the stakeholder feedback we've got, it's not clear whether they were one of the stakeholders because the survey response was anonymous, and we encouraged them to be anonymous to allow free and frank feedback. Again, learning for us for next year, but we would happily take and have that conversation with any stakeholders if they wanted to speak to us throughout the year.
Yeah, well, that's helpful to understand that. And, I know there's challenges and there's difficulties, but adhering to the timelines is really important. And I think what you're saying there as well, Vanessa, is that for some stakeholders, 3 days is not enough, but I suppose there are channels, if there's particular areas that they would be interested in, that they could reach out to us and we could have a conversation around these things.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other comments from committee members? Clearly, there are one or two in here that one or two comments, particularly that will need discussion at the away day. Getting reports in sufficient time to study them is undoubtedly an ongoing challenge, and there are some reports that come in very good time and are very easy to follow, and they're quite short and succinct. Others are much more complicated and do require more time. I'm very conscious that with the reduced numbers of board members from the 1st of April until new members are appointed, that will put additional pressure on the remaining members across all committees. So I think giving people sufficient time to be able to study them is probably of increasing importance. And indeed, I suspect that most members remaining will have even busier diaries and fuller diaries than they've had in the last wee while. So I don't underestimate the challenge going forward. But I think, as others have said, I think getting this sort of independent feedback is so important, both from committee members and from all the other stakeholders in this, to actually get their views on what we're doing and could we do them better. And I think I'm all for continuous improvement, learning lessons from what has been problems in the past. And certainly, I think there have been a few instances where it has been a wee bit late before we've been given, say, a change request because it's still being worked on by the appropriate part of Police Scotland. So joining up the dots, if you like, into a realistic timeline and making sure that reports are being considered and requests are being considered at the right stage in the year to make sure that things happen in a smooth way is so important. Getting, say, a business, an outline business case leading to a full business case to getting it then implemented and delivered is a journey. And I hope that the processes we've got don't slow up that journey in any way. but if there's anything that can be done to sort of better oil the process, I think we'll all be very keen to hear that. Okay, so Vanessa, you asked us particularly to look at para 3.11 areas for improvement, and I think certainly it's very difficult to do this in detail in a public forum. I think it lends itself much more to detailed consideration at a workshop. But
Yes.
are members happy that that's the approach we should take? I'm getting nods, so I think there's general agreement to that. Vanessa, anything else that you feel that we haven't discussed that we should have done?
No, Chair, I just need the committee's confirmation that you're happy to sign off the committee assurance certificate, which requires to go to ARAC in May.
As far as I'm concerned, yes. It won't be for me to sign it off, I don't think. Pauline, are you happy about that? Okay, right. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think Vanessa, thank you for that report.
Thank
Very
you.
helpful, gives us lots of food for thought. Oh, sorry, Pauline, you got your hand up.
No, it's not on that item. I just wanted just to mention something else before we finish the public session, Chair.
Oh, right, okay. Think that's so Vanessa, thank you very much. Does that give you the feedback that you're looking for, and we can then
Ideal, yes, we'll take that forward through committee development days, priorities and work plans.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Right, Pauline, my apologies, I thought you were commenting on that particular item. Yes, over to you.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to publicly acknowledge, Chair, that this is yours and Caroline's last meeting, last scheduled Resources Committee meeting, and to thank both you and Caroline for your tremendous input and development of this committee since you were appointed to the authority way back in 2017. I think you've both been on this committee since that time, all those 8 years ago. Both of you have made significant contributions, Caroline, through your wealth of experience, knowledge and delivery of large-scale technology programmes. You've generously shared that knowledge and experience with Police Scotland during a time of really unprecedented reform, and you've helped and supported the reshaping of policing during that time. So many thanks to you for all you've done. You've done it with grace and good humour, and some constructive challenge where that's been appropriate as well. And Grant, you've got tremendous experience of public sector finance, risk and corporate governance, and again, you've generously shared your knowledge and experience to support the strengthening of financial oversight of policing in Scotland, and also supporting the eradication of the structural deficit that Police Scotland inherited when it was set up. So I want to formally and publicly thank you both and wish you all both very much the best wishes and success in whatever you both choose to do after the 31st of March, once you are no longer members of the authority. So thank you both very much.
Thank you very much, Pauline. Thank you very much for these very kind words. Alistair.
Apologies, Grant. It was the wrong emoji, if that's what they're called. I just wanted to applaud and endorse the words of Pauline.
Right, thank you. That's very kind, and thank you for the flag, the hands being waved as well. That really brings us to the end of the public session, and we've got some chunky